Let's move on to the next question that we got. And so after you got in the Japanese companies, what was the cultural change of business that was the hardest to adapt for you?
I have never worked as a full-time employee in a German company, right? So even though I have an idea of how it is to work in a German company, also right after graduation, I joined a Japanese company. So I think my stance might be a bit different. I'm having a very tough time with the indirectness on conversations here in Japan. Like, in German language, we say everything very direct. So a yes is a yes and a no is a no. And we do not care that much about the other's emotion or like well-being or harmony. In Japan, even if you have a discussion in the company and you need to, get through your own opinion or want to get people on your side, you have to be very careful on how you word things. And I faced a lot of difficult situations, like misunderstandings, because I didn't understand if the person wants me to do that task or not, or if it's a yes or a no, because, they're very indirect. And that was definitely one of the biggest challenges. And until today, like I made it a habit to just be asked about everything. So I'm like, so you mean this and this? And then most of the time the person is like, no, I mean this and this. So okay, then check it again. And try to find out what the person really wants to say and really wants me to do.
Yeah, that's what I also felt when I was working with Jenny, and I tried to be more direct and make it simple.
It always makes me remember this one situation. It's a bit off topic, but please allow me to talk about it. Back at university, we went to a club, Hokkaido University. So back in Japan, we went to a club all together with friends. And there was this one guy, and I thought he was kind of cute, so I wanted to dance with him. So I asked him, do you want to dance with me? In Japanese. And he said, atode, which translates to later. So I was like, my German mind was like, okay, later. So an hour later, I asked him again, so do you want to dance with me now? And he was like, Jenny, what I really meant was no. I was like, okay. So in Japan, it definitely is very important to what they call kuki o yomu, like read the air. Like what? And me as a German, I'm like, what the hell? Air is just air. There's nothing to read in it.
So I learned a lot from you actually when I was working with you, because that was fun though. Yeah, sometimes difficult, but it was fun.
Right? Yeah, definitely.
Pros and cons of Japanese company. What is a good point about Japanese company and bad point of Japanese company?
Again, I think this is a bit difficult to answer because I think it depends very much on which company, because you cannot just say overseas company and Japanese company.
That's from your perspective, that's okay.
I think in general, you will get less money and you will need to work more. And also, it is quite difficult to get promotions, I feel. Not only as a foreigner, but also like as a woman. I feel that's still difficult, especially if you have a look at the gender gap report. Japan is really well behind. So I don't know, they're like on rank 108 or something. So that's definitely a thing you want to keep in mind.
And maybe the salary is low at first, you can learn so many things in Japanese company because Japanese companies love to teach you or train you, and then you can get some kind of skills, and you can switch jobs to make more money. So I think learning in Japanese companies are one of the tactics.
Yeah, on the job training definitely is very important here in Japan, which I personally really like, because you do not need to be too stressed about, like, I've never learned that, or I cannot do that, because the company will make sure to educate you and to support you.
I think in that sense, Japanese companies are really good for you.
Yeah, true. But then on the other hand, what I think you can really enjoy here is, if you work in a Japanese company, it's like you really have this Japanese experience. I think, like, if you work in an international company in the States, or also in Europe, you might still not talk the language of the country that much, except if the language is English, because like they already have a very international environment. But in Japan, I think it's a plus that even though it's very globalized, there's still a lot of a lot of points where you can bring in your talent and your potential as a foreign person. So I think, especially I recognize now in the company I'm working at, it's a lot of fun, because they do not have like a lot of affiliates overseas yet, and because they are trying now to get foreign customers, because that way I can do a lot of work connected to it, which is like really a lot of fun, because it's like kind of working as a pioneer. And I think in a lot of Japanese companies you have that possibility, which I definitely think is a good thing. And also well, what we said before, Germans are very direct. We do not care that much about the other's emotions, and that it's difficult sometimes that conversations are indirect in Japan. It's true, but still also, valuing harmony and trying to not offend the other person is really very nice. Like it's I feel very, very easy to be around Japanese people. They're very polite, very friendly. Which I really, really appreciate. Especially if I go back to Germany, I'm always like, okay, people are not like being very friendly on the streets, on the supermarket, but here in Japan and also inside the company, I really feel that people are trying very hard to make me feel comfortable here, also as a foreigner, which I think is really nice.
Also, in Japanese company, we have more like family kind of vibe. If you are working for the same company, you are more than just a workmates, more like friends or family. And then, yeah, people are generally nice to you, even though it's workplace,
It's very normal to go out with their coworkers after work for a drink and to enjoy time together. And I even heard, I'm not sure, Asagi, I'm not sure if it's true though, Asagi, maybe you know that there's some companies who even arrange for the employees to find a good partner, or like, find someone to marry.
Yeah. Having a relationship in the same workplace is still pretty common in Japan, and it's kind of a Japanese company's culture. And then some people try to help you to get a partner in the company. For me, it's not really helpful, but for some people, I think that's very, good, right?
I think it's very difficult to generalize those pros and cons, because it really depends on what you want from your life. Like, I always think it's very positive to go overseas for you to grow yourself and to make new experiences. So I would always say in any country it's positive if you go overseas. But besides that, there are a lot of pros and cons you want to make sure for yourself beforehand, before you join a company overseas or a foreign company. You want to make sure if you can live with also the negative parts coming with it.
Right. Do you think JLPT certification is helpful? You got the JLPT 2?
Yeah.
N2, yeah. She has
Well,
N2.
I had to take the JLPT because it
Right.
was part of my contract for the company I worked at before.
Mm.
I personally do not like the JLPT because it is a test which does not require you to speak or write Japanese. And I think speaking and writing is, especially speaking, is the most important thing about learning a language or to see if someone can really speak a language. So that's why I do not like the JLPT, but I think there's no way around it if you want to work in Japan. If you want to join a Japanese company, most of them require N2 or N1. I'd say with most of the companies you will get through with an N2, but if you do not have that, it might be very difficult to get a job in a Japanese company.
Right. Yeah. N3 or 4 don't really help, right? To
Yeah,
get a
definitely they do not help to get a job, I guess. It's getting interesting from N2 and N1, at least from what I experienced. Someone asked like what's best to learn, Japanese, school, book, or watch anime all day long. Well, for me, it was definitely a combination of all of them. I definitely it was definitely very good that I had teachers teaching me at university because especially when I started learning that language, it was very good to have a guidance also on pronunciation, especially, and also on how to write katakana and hiragana and kanji. But yeah, also for the N2, I just used this kind of learning books to learn for myself. And I think it's very important to improve your listening, to just watch, for example, anime or to watch Japanese news. I do so. I definitely watch Japanese news during my lunch break every day. And I also try to, you know, do some reading, easy
Oh,
reading with manga.
wonderful.
And yeah, I think the most important thing is that you force yourself to really speak and listen to it. So actually, I think the best way is to come to Japan because then you just really need to, you're forced to speak it.
Yeah. Kylie Miu-san asks, would you recommend just going to Japan with a working holiday visa and then just searching for a job?
You could try. That depends on what kind of, if you want a full-time employment or if you just I don't know, have a work for a year and then go back. I personally, like I said, it's difficult to find or to get a job while you are in your country. I think there are a lot of hurdles, but then again, it might be better to find a company in your country which is related to Japan, so you could transfer inside the company to Japan. I think that's the safest process.
Right.
Because I definitely have met a Spanish person, who came to Japan without having a job and who was searching for it. And he had a very high qualification, like he had a manager position before at a very well-known company and was definitely very good in his job, but was not able to speak Japanese very well. And he decided to come here and then apply here. But he had a very hard time finding a position, and he was often told that he needs to improve his Japanese to get a job here. So I think if you're not confident with your Japanese skills yet, you might first want to make sure to improve your Japanese and maybe come here for language holiday, like have a language seminar, and while we're here learning the language, try to get connections with different companies and
Mhm.
talk directly to them, because I often feel that the normal way of applying is very difficult for foreigners.
Right.
So I can't really say if it's better to come to Japan or to stay in your country.
Yeah, but it has a risk, right?
Yeah, exactly. So for me, it was very good that I got my first job while I still was in Germany. And then while I knew I wanted to switch jobs, I was still in Japan and I was able to do all that in Japan when switching jobs. That was definitely a great help. But it was a process. In my first job, I applied from Germany. And then just for the second job, I did everything in Japan in Japanese. But it was like really, I do not want to lie, it was the toughest time in my life. Seriously, it was
Mm,
so hard and
right.
so difficult. So you would definitely need some energy if you say you come directly to Japan and search here in Japan.
What do you think is inefficient or
Mm,
efficient during working in Japanese company?
Basically, we come back to the topic of directness and indirectness. But because, for example, in meetings, if you first need to make sure of everyone's emotion, try to keep the harmony, sometimes discussions are very slow, to say so.
Mm,
Like they're not as vivid as I'd imagine them to be, for example, in Germany. So I feel it makes it very difficult sometimes to progress. That's definitely one thing. And the second thing is, because of the hierarchies, you need permission for everything.
right.
And not only the permission of your direct boss, but also the boss of that boss and the boss of that boss. And
Mm.
it's just
Yeah,
you
I
need,
was kind
the
of
stamp
annoyed by
of,
that too.
yeah, every superior. So that definitely takes a lot of time. And I definitely know that a lot of manufacturers are facing difficulties because, for example, companies in America, they do not have this structures. They have rather flat hierarchies, so they can be very faster than Japanese companies. And I definitely heard that a lot of Japanese companies face difficulties because of that, and they're trying to change that structure to become quicker. So that definitely, yeah, feels inefficient to me.
Uh-huh.
And another point is the stance towards taking holiday. You know, we Germans are well known for taking very long holidays, like 3 weeks in a row. But still, we have very good economic output, even though we also do not do a lot of overwork.
Mhm.
And compared to Japan, they have way more uh, overwork and take less holiday, but still the economic output is less than Germany's. So I think that even though Japanese people do a lot of overwork, it's not a very efficient time. Like they should rather, call it a day, get some sleep, and then they will perform better the next day, or just take a week or even 2 weeks holiday, but then will even perform better when they return. That's at least what I believe. I really believe, and I think what a lot of companies in Germany believe. But this concept is not very common yet in Japan, and I feel that's the point why sometimes workers here or companies are being inefficient. Again, though, it's not directly related to company, but when
Mm.
I went to hear the speech of the Tenno,
Speech.
there were a lot. Yeah, like once a year, he's like having a New Year's greeting or whatever,
Oh.
and there are really a lot of people going there, and then
Mhm.
they will have like this 2 or 3 stations. At the first station they will make sure that you do not have any drinks. At the second station they will check your bags, and then it's very very efficient and like tracked, and just so perfect. I've never seen that in Germany. Also, like, you know, the way they get into trains, and first people get out and then people get in, and they have all those lines on the floor for it to make, you know, to direct those people. So in that way, I think Japanese people can be very efficient.
P-chan asks, do Japanese companies prefer foreigners with a Japanese university degree or foreign degree? Does that make difference? I don't know. If you have a degree, you are fine in Japan. That's my opinion.
I think again we come back to that topic that it's not so much about what you studied, but that you showed that you have the ability and the potential. So, I mean, if you made your degree at a Japanese university, most likely people will, the employer will know that you're probably fluent in Japanese. So that could be a plus point, but I think it very much depends on the job. Like if the job is mainly about, I don't know, talking in English or doing something overseas and with affiliates overseas, it might as well be better for them to choose someone with a foreign degree. So again, it depends on what job you apply for, I think.
What area do you think is affordable but has a quick commute to the city?
With city, does he mean Tokyo or she?
I think Tokyo.
Okay. Well, you definitely do not want to live directly in Tokyo because it's just very, very, very expensive. I live close to Yokohama, which is Kanagawa Prefecture, which is the prefecture next to Tokyo.
Yeah.
And I'm being very honest now. I have 28 square meters of a one-room apartment, and I pay Hachiman yen, it's like 80,000 yen, which in euro is like 715 euro. I do not know in US dollars though. So I think that's still considered quite expensive in a lot of countries, but it's a nice apartment, and I commute like nearly an hour. So I need to walk to the station and then get onto the train and change trains. But I think that's quite normal, right? If you have a job in Tokyo, that you will need to commute at least an hour.
Yeah, that's an average commute time. So yeah, I would say, yeah, Yokohama is a nice city, but they still have a really big population there, and still expensive actually. So I would say Saitama or Chiba is less expensive and still have a good access to Tokyo.